Saint Augustine commentary on Psalm 119. In this great psalm there comes next in order that which, with the Lord's help, we must consider and treat of. Set a law for me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall seek it always. Verse 33. Why does this man still pray for a law to be laid down for him, which, if it had not been laid down for him, he could not have run the way of God's commandments in the breadth of his heart? But since one speaks with growing in grace, and who knows that it is God's gift that he profits in grace, what else does he pray when he prays that a law may be laid down for him, save that he may profit more and more? As if you hold a full cup and give it to a thirsty man, he both exhausts it by drinking it and prays for it by still longing for it. But what does it mean, evermore? Does evermore mean as long as we live here, because we progress in grace so long? But after this life, he who was in a good course of improvement here is made perfect there? Here the law of God is examined into as long as we progress in it, both by knowing it and by loving it, but there its fullness abides for our enjoyment, not for our examination. Thus also is this spoken, seek his face evermore. Psalm 105, verse 4. Where evermore save here? For we shall not there also seek the face of God when we shall see face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:12. Or, if that which is loved without a change of affection is rightly said to be sought after, and our only object is that it be not lost, we shall indeed evermore seek the law of God, that is, the truth of God, for in this very psalm it is said, and your law is the truth. Psalm 119, verse 142. It is now sought that it may be held fast. It will then be held fast that it may not be lost. Give me understanding, and I shall search your law. Yea, I shall keep it with my whole heart. Verse 34. For when each man has searched the law and searched its deep things, in which its whole meaning does consist, he ought indeed to love God with all his heart, with all his soul, with all his mind, and his neighbor as himself. For on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Matthew 22, verse 37 to 40. This he seems to have promised when he said, Yea, I shall keep it with my whole heart. But since he has no power to do even this, save he be aided by him who commands him to do what he commands, make me, he adds, to go in the path of your commandments, for therein is my desire. Verse 35. My desire is powerless unless you yourself make me to go where I desire. And this is surely the very path, that is, the path of God's commandments, which he had already said that he had run when his heart was enlarged by the Lord. And this he calls a path because the way is narrow which leads unto life. Matthew 7:14. And since it is narrow, we cannot run therein save with a heart enlarged. He next says, Incline my heart unto your testimonies and not to covetousness. Verse 36. This then he prays, that he may profit in the will itself. But the apostle says, avarice is the root of all evils. 1 Timothy 6:10. But in the Greek, whence these words have been rendered into our tongue, the word used by the apostle is not pleonexia, which occurs in this passage of the Psalms, but philarguria, by which is signified love of money. But the apostle must be understood to have meant genius by speeches when he used this word, that is, to have meant avarice universally and generally by love of money, which is truly the root of all evils. Genesis 3:5. If therefore our heart be not inclined to covetousness, we fear God only for God's sake, so that he is the only reward of our serving him. Let us love him in himself, let us love him in ourselves, him in our neighbors, whom we love as ourselves, whether they have him or in order that they may have him. The next words in the psalm which we have undertaken to expound are, O turn away mine eyes, lest they behold vanity, and quicken you me in your way. Verse 37. Vanity and truth are directly contrary to one another. The desires of this world are vanity, but Christ, who frees us from the world, is truth. He is the way, too, wherein this man wishes to be quickened, for he is also the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6 are his own words. He prays that those eyes wherewith we consider on what account we do what we do may be turned away, that they behold not vanity, that is, that he may not look to vanity as his motive when he does anything good. In this vanity the first place is held by the love of men's praise, on account of which many great deeds have been wrought by those who are styled great in this world, and who have been much praised in heathen states, seeking glory not with God, but among men, and on account of this living in appearance prudently, courageously, temperately, and righteously, and when they have reached this, they have reached their reward. Vain men and vain reward. Matthew 6:1. Moreover, if it be a vain thing to do good works for the sake of men's praises, how much more vain for the sake of getting money, or increasing it, or retaining it, and any other temporal advantage which comes unto us from without? Since all things are vanity, that is man's abundance, with all his toil, wherein he labors under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 23. For our temporal welfare itself, finally, we ought not to do our good works, but rather for the sake of that everlasting welfare which we hope for, where we may enjoy an unchangeable good, which we shall have from God, nay, what God himself is unto us. For if God's saints were to do good works for the sake of this temporal welfare, never would the martyrs of Christ achieve a good work of confession in the loss of this same welfare. O establish your word in your servant, that I may fear you. Verse 38. And what else is this than grant unto me that I may do according to what you say? For the word of God is not established in those who remove it in themselves by acting contrary to it, but it is established in those in whom it is immovable. God therefore establishes his word that they may fear him in those unto whom he gives the spirit of the fear of him, not that fear of which the apostle says, you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear. Romans 8:15. For perfect love casts out this fear. 1 John 4:18. But that fear which the prophet calls the spirit of the fear of the Lord. Isaiah 51 verse 2. That fear which is pure and endures forever. Psalm 19 verse 9. That fear which fears to offend him whom it loves. Take away my reproach which I have suspected, for your judgments are sweet. Verse 91. Verse 39. Who is he who suspected his own reproach and who does not know his own reproach better than that of his neighbor? For a man may rather suspect another's than his own, since he knows not that which he suspects. But in each one's own reproach there is not suspicion for him, but knowledge, wherein conscience speaks. What then do the words mean? The rebuke which I have suspected? The meaning of them must be derived from the former verse, since as long as a man does not turn away his eyes lest they behold vanity, he suspects in others what is going on himself, so that he believes another to worship God and do good works from the same motive as himself. For men can see what we do, but with a view to what end we act is hidden. Behold, I have coveted your commandments. O quicken you me in your righteousness. Verse 40. Behold, I have coveted to love you with all my heart, and with all my soul, and with all my mind, and my neighbor as myself. But, O quicken you me not in my own, but in your righteousness. That is, fill me with that love which I have longed for. Aid me that I may do that which you charge me. Yourself give what you do command. O quicken you me in your righteousness, for in myself I had that which would cause my death. But I find not save in you, whence I may live. Christ is my righteousness. Christ is your righteousness, who of God is made unto wisdom. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 30 and 31. And in him I find your commandments, which I have coveted, that in your righteousness, that is, in him, you may quicken me. For the Word himself is God, and the Word was made flesh, that he himself also might be my neighbor.